So, hi, it's Stephen. So, I've been thinking more about this this problem we have in physics of figuring out how the quantum world leads to the world that we live in. How this quantum, where time doesn't seem to matter which way it runs, and seems to be probability based, leads to our world, which has a very strong timeline, and which doesn't seem to be probability based, right? It seems as though one thing happens after the other in the order that is completely comprehensible and predictable. And science until 100 years ago, or maybe 150 years ago, was completely on board with the idea that that the predictability, the teleology, the world proceeds from one event to the other in an orderly manner. And then we also have in the quantum world that we say has no timeline. We have an equation for how events happen, how quantum events proceed in our world, and the equation is highly accurate, extremely accurate. And so it says if the wave function of the quantum, right, is in this state, that you can say that that it will proceed towards this next state in our world of directedness, of a timeline that's predictable. So there's so somehow these two ideas are working with each other. Obviously, here we are. We know the world is both quantum and I call it thermodynamic and time directed, but we don't know how they're connected. So, and I've been trying to work that into Christian mechanics, right? So how does Christianity work in a way that can accommodate? And I've come to the conclusion that Christianity is the religion that can accommodate the quantum. If we think of the Trinity, or if we think of Jesus as a quantum thing, as having multiple states at once, so the Trinity. But then in action, just as that equation says, that in action it has a very particular method. And of course, as I was positing, the wave function of the Trinity decoheres. It decoheres upon at the moment of the event, and we are on the timeline of the probability of the decoherence that leads to what we see, which is Jesus Christ born and living in our world. Though that activity of his birth was originating as a member of the Trinity, decohering and entering our world. And so it has a very good way that Christianity in the way that I'm describing it, which has a very nice alignment, right, with physical theories. But I've been reading lately about more about the Ark of the Covenant, and I had never really thought too much about the Ark of the Covenant. And something I was reading started talking about the book of Joshua, and I don't know that I had really looked at Joshua, but then you have this idea of the ark with the cherubim, with the cherubim on the top, two cherubim that are facing each other, and that those cherubim are guarding the contents, right? And you can't open the ark, right? You can't at your extreme peril touch this ark, and these cherubim or seraphim. Seraphim are fiery guards with flaming swords. Yes, so you could think that if you touch the ark, these two cherubim will will pull their flaming swords and turn you into ash. But that, I hadn't really thought about that too much. I know it's in popular culture. We have movies that depict this activity. But I was thinking, there also in that there's a passage. It's in Exodus, right? This is in Exodus where Joshua is, not the book of Joshua. It's the Joshua's in Exodus, and it says that that God will meet us. God will meet you at the cherubim on the ark. So you have to meet God with a purity, and if you don't have that purity, then the cherubim are going to shave off the parts of you that aren't pure, and what remains will be pure, and you will be in a state compatible with the quantum state that is the Trinity. And so how do you shave off the parts of our reality as a thermodynamic reality? What do you need to shave off to get back to the quantum? So instead of thinking about how does the quantum proceed to us, in this case, the Bible is instructing us in how do we proceed back to an understanding of the quantum, and you need to will meet you at the seraphim, and the seraphim are there to guard God against your being contaminated by the timeline, teleological, fallen world that we live in, and so they shave off the parts that are timeline dependent, and they get you back to the multiple states at once, back to the Trinitarian. You can get back to God meeting you. Now, of course, this story it's a Hebrew story, right? So we're ascribing a whole lot of activity to it that was not attended at when the story was written. But it's got a certain ring to it, right? It's got a nice. I think it has a very nice feel to it, and we can sort of maybe have a better understanding with this old Exodus story of the quantum world by imagining the seraphim as reorienting us towards the timeless, right? Towards the, and that's what we try to do in Orthodoxy. The whole thing in Orthodoxy is we try to enter that timeless moment of God's kingdom to come, where time doesn't proceed, and where we have total enlightenment, and so we get shaved off of the unenlightened parts by the fiery swords of the cherubim of the ark, and are in a state that can meet God. Now, this is the old story, and the new story is that Jesus Christ comes to solve these problems, to help us to align ourselves to God in a way that we don't have to go through the fiery sword of the cherubim in order to be saved. But I like and we also have this idea in Orthodoxy that the old writings and the new writings are aligned at the birth of Jesus Christ, and that the old mirrors the new. So maybe we can think of that meeting at the cherubim and having ourselves purified to see God as sort of like a baptism, right? It's like a moment of baptism. So if we take that, then you might say that the moment at which we are able to contemplate the quantum by going back towards it, instead of trying to figure out how the quantum leads to us, how can we be led back to God? It has this sort of baptism by fire, right? This baptism, this shaving off of your of the parts of you that aren't correct, instead of being imbued by the Holy Spirit and changing you from the inside, which is the new writing, the coming of Jesus and the importance is he's changing us internally out. In the case of the seraphim on the ark, they're changing us from the outside in. So maybe it's simply the old story is one showing us how to get back to God by removing the parts of you that are offensive, and the new is the installation of the Holy Spirit through baptism, guarding you from the inside, from fault, and then you simply have to confess you simply have to be sorry that you committed sins in the presence of God in order to keep from having pieces of you that the flaming swords will need to cut off when you return back to the oneness of God in his kingdom to come. So that's it for today.